Well, hi, it is Sunday, the 21st of February, 2021. Welcome to this little time that we spend together every Sunday as I try to share this message across our country. I want to share with you today from a very familiar passage of Scripture, one that you know well, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and I want to read that entire chapter. This is the word of the Lord. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but don't have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames but have not love, I gain nothing. For love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. And I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man or an adult, I put childish ways behind me. Now, we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. This is the word of the Lord. I've had the privilege of officiating at many wedding ceremonies, looking at the bride and groom as they make their promises and commitments and their vows to each other. I'm always struck by the appearance of love and devotion towards each other. Of course, time will tell whether that was appearance or whether that was genuine, ongoing love and dedication. There's a big difference between the wedding and the marriage. The wedding is the day, the marriage is the lifetime. The wedding is the crisis, the marriage is the process, and the love that draws people together keeps people together. There's a poem that I often quote. I don't have it verbatim, but is there anything more beautiful in life than a young man and a young woman clasping hands on the day of their wedding? Yes, there is something more beautiful. It is the picture of an old man and an old woman still clasping hands. Their faces might be seamed. Their knuckles and hands and fingers might be gnarled, but their love and dedication has proved their commitment. I remember one couple, particularly the groom, who was always looking at me when we were rehearsing the night before for the wedding. And in the exchange of the vows, instead of looking at his bride, he would look at me. And I said, now listen, tomorrow, I want you to look at your bride when you're making these commitments. Well, tomorrow came, we had the ceremony, and I just had this feeling that this guy was going to be looking at me. It was as if he was going to marry me. He was repeating the words to me, and as much as I tried to get his attention to look at his bride, he wouldn't. So I just firmly but gently and kindly said in the midst of the ceremony, now listen, You're talking to your bride. You're making these commitments to her, so I want you to look at her. True love, pure love, is seen when we look into the eyes of Jesus. When we make our commitments to him, we learn what true love really is. And in making those commitments, we are then held responsible as responsible people to those very commitments. If I was speaking to Jesus and looking over here at somebody else, even if it is a minister, by the way, then I am missing the whole point that Paul is trying to teach. Albert Banks wrote these words about love. He said, "Love is the sacred oil which gives smoothness of action and efficiency to all the machinery of life." How true that is, that life runs on the rails of love. Life runs successfully on the rails of love. Jesus, when answering the Pharisees, after they had asked him the question, what is the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your strength and with all of your mind. And then he said, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no mistake that the word all is in there on purpose. That love cannot be compromised. It can't be a partial love, but the love that we have for God, and as a result of that, loving our neighbor as ourselves, the love that we have for others demands our all. Those words were found in Luke chapter 10, verse 27. It was also lived out in the words that were written to the Romans by Paul in chapter 12, verses 9 to 13. Here's what he said: love must be sincere. Hate what is evil and cling to what is good. Be devoted to each other in, he used the word, brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves, which is the litmus test for love. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. And again in Romans chapter 13, verse 8, he says these words: let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another, for he who loves his fellow man has fulfilled the law. That's a powerful statement. Let no debt be outstanding. In other words, we've got to take care of all our debts, except for the debt to love one another. That is ongoing. That is a monthly deduction that comes out of who you are. It's a weekly deduction that comes out of who you are. It's a daily and hourly and minute by minute withdrawal from whom we are as we share the love of God with others. So Paul, in our familiar passage today, reminds us that the fundamentals to successful existence are faith, hope, and love. But then he votes on the most important. Then he makes no mistake in telling us that as good as these other two things are, faith and hope, love is the greatest. And then he goes on and he explains it. He actually goes on by telling us what love really is in the preceding verses. He said, if I am able to speak with the tongues of men and of angels, if I'm really that spiritual but don't have love, then I'm just a sounding gong and a clanging cymbal. I'm just making a noise, and a loud noise, and in actual fact, an aggravating noise. He says, if I have the gift of prophecy, and if I can pretty well know everything about anything, or if I am just the Encyclopedia Britannica to which you must come, and I don't have love, then I've got nothing. And he said, if I've got faith, if I have faith enough to remove mountains but don't have love, I have nothing. In fact, he goes on to say, and even if I were to sell everything that I've got, all my possessions, and give those to the poor, and if I were to surrender my body to the flames of martyrdom, and I don't have love, it's just a waste of time. Gain nothing with that. And then he moves from what could be classed as the negative to the positive. He defines and describes what love is. There's no need to be confused as to what love is, friends. When we look at this scripture, we have it. And I share this with the bride and groom at every wedding ceremony, and I share it with you today. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. Love is not rude. Love does not seek its own, and love is not easily angered. And I always share this one. I always highlight this one, that love keeps no record of wrongs. You know, in a relationship, it's usually the straw that breaks the camel's back that destroys relationship. What do I mean by that? I mean that it's usually that mental record of wrongs that is kept in the logbook of one or both in a relationship until something that has nothing to do with the issues at hand suddenly just bursts the bubble. It suddenly just takes a simple situation and makes it explosive. You know why? It's because there's a record of wrongs being kept in the mind and in the heart. There's a record of wrongs. So they may not be written down on a piece of paper, but I'm telling you, most relationship breakdowns are caused by a record of wrongs that is brought up every time there's a new issue. What does that say about forgiveness? What does that say about forgetting when we forgive? What does that say about us in the church when maybe there's historical issues that are readdressed over and over again? Maybe there are hurts that have been inflicted upon somebody's family 20, 30, 40 years ago, and like the Hatfields and the McCoys, we keep on going, even when the Hatfields and the McCoys couldn't remember what the conflict was about in the first place. Paul says, love keeps no record of wrongs. It does not delight in evil, but it rejoices not only in the truth, but it rejoices with the truth. And love always protects, and love always trusts, and love always hopes, and love always perseveres, and it never fails. Other things will cease. Faith, even faith will cease. Prophecies will cease. Tongues will cease. All of those good works will cease. But love never will. I've told you before on this wedding theme that there is an Irish wedding ring called a claddagh ring. It's made up of a heart that is surrounded by hands, and it has a crown on top. It's all in this little ring. If I had a picture, well, you can Google it and see it. Of course, the heart stands for the love, the hands stand for the support, and the crown stands for loyalty. These entities are all part of what true love really is. I heard a funny story about two Irishmen who were working for the city. And they were spending the whole day working on a particular street in the city. And there was a man sitting on his porch at the end of the road, and he had been watching them work the entire day. He was puzzled. He could not understand what in the world they were doing. When they eventually reached his house towards the end of a day's work, his curiosity got the better of him, and so he called them over. I said, I've been watching you all day. He said, you've been digging a hole and you've been filling it in, and every 30 yards up our street, that's what you've been doing. You've been digging the hole and you've been filling it in. What in the world are you doing? Well, the reply was swift. Murphy says, well, you see, there's usually 3 of us. I digs the hole, O'Malley plants the tree, and Flanagan here, he fills it in. But O'Malley's off sick today. Now, I want you to think about that. You just let it settle. You see, only an Irishman can tell a joke, an Irish joke, so no emails and no complaints and no, don't be sending me for sensitivity training. There's something very important about this little funny story. The fact of the matter is, it's exactly what Paul was talking about in 1 Corinthians 13. You see, the 3 things are not Murphy, O'Malley, and Flanagan. The 3 things are faith, hope, and love. And if love doesn't show up, if love is off today because it's sick, then the other 2 things are futile. And we can go up every street with faith and hope. We can dig the hole of faith and we can fill it in with hope. But if we don't plant the tree of love, then what we do is completely futile. The 14th chapter in that first letter to Corinthians actually starts off almost as if it's supposed to be a continuation of the 13th chapter, where Paul says, now follow the way of love. So he's given us the story of what love is, and now he says, just follow it. John Fawcett in 1782 captured the essence of what true love really is in a beautiful hymn entitled, Blessed Be the Tie That Binds. Listen to these words. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love. The fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Before our Father's throne, we pour our ardent prayers. Our fears, our hopes, our aims are one, our comforts and our cares. We share our mutual woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows a sympathizing tear. When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall be joined in heart until we meet again. Picture love as water in the desert. You just wouldn't want to waste a drop. God bless. Looking forward to talking with you again next Sunday. Bye for now.